Terrence and His Home That Won't Stay Put. Words and pictures created by Scott Kelley. Terrence had a home in the city. He loved where his home was. He loved it. Or did he? His home sat atop the steepest hill in town. Tall buildings all around him squished his home and made him frown. One day, Terrence had enough. City life was not for him. He moved far into the country, where the lights were much more dim. But he loved his little home, so he had to move it too. He dug it up, strapped some wheels on, then he towed it right on through. He found a spot in the country where no one came nearby. He set his home up, drank a beverage, thought himself a lucky guy. Peace and quiet and tranquility. He had it all at last. Terrence thought that for a moment, but his peace, it quickly passed. Pretty soon a passer-by was passing by his country lot, and he liked the land around him so much he thought, "Why not? Why don't I build a home for me on this pleasant little hill? I'm sure my neighbor won't mind." "Oh, good sir, I'm sure he will." Days passed by, then weeks and months. More folks kept moving by. Terrence saw this town grow big, but he wouldn't move. "Why try? Why move again to a peaceful place? I'll be followed there as well." So he lived once more in a city. In his home he'll never sell. On a clear afternoon, Terrence sat upon his chair. From his window he looked up. Something's falling through the air. He watched it fall much closer until it crashed right at his door. What crashed upon his home? Just a giant meteor! It rolled along the landscape, tossing his home with it too. The rock rested by a lake. His home atop it flew. Terrence crawled out his front door. His home was such a mess. But with not a soul around him, he was happy nonetheless. Two guys from the big city came by to climb the rock. At the top, they saw his home, so they chose it best to knock. Terrence answered, and they told him, "We love your home up here. We think we'll be your neighbors." Terrence shed one lonesome tear. He knew that time would pass. Another city would be built. All those buildings and the roads would cause his little home to tilt. And sure it did. A city grew atop the giant meteor. The buildings and congestion, no more he could ignore. The city kept on growing, finally pushed him off the ledge. His home fell into a lake as Terrence held onto a hedge. Then he let go and fell below to his home under the lake. As he drifted with the current, he wondered if he'd wake. He thought that he'd been dreaming. His mind was going through a test. As he swam to catch his home, it washed ashore and came to rest. But in a cave, deep underground, where you cannot see the sky, Terrence reached his home at last, thought he'd give this place a try. He thought no one would ever find this place. He'd be alone at last. Then he searched for a way to the surface, and he had to find one fast. For there was no light that reached him, only one handheld flashlight. And if he'd keep it on, it'd only last him one more night. Wouldn't you know, as he was out, a swimmer came swimming in. He noticed his old home starting to cycle up again. First he moved by, then brought some more, who brought some more until another larger city grew, which gave Terrence a chill. Terrence then got used to life, his life in the big city. His thoughts would sway toward solitude, but no one would take pity. Still, this would not be his final move. More luck would come his way, some good, some bad, most weird and sad. One spot he'd rarely stay. One evening in the summer, Terrence heard a rumbling sound. His home sat atop some lava that was hidden underground. Then all at once it burst right through, moving Terrence and his home through the rock and through the air while his eyes began to roam. "Where will I land? Will I survive?" Thoughts kept racing through his mind. One thought he just kept thinking, what kind of spot his home might find. His home was floating through the air, then soon began to fall into a desert, nobody near, just a cactus standing tall. Now his old home in a new place, again no one around. But Terrence knew it won't take long till his new place is found. Until that time he laid around and enjoyed the desert sun. 9 days went by, then came a man. The new city has begun. First, one by one, then busloads full of people moving by. Another city grew where Terrence lived, in the desert, hot and dry. This city was the biggest yet, 10,803,000. Terrence lived right in the center, with nowhere left to flee. So he stayed as the city grew, without a grumble or complaint. He watched them build a place next door. He could smell the fresh new paint. A launchpad for a rocket was constructed on the desert floor. The only ground on which to build was next to his front door. On the first day of the launch, the wind was kicking up much dust. The old home where Terrence lived was picked up with the latest gust. With no foundation holding firm, his home tossed to and fro, then landed on the rocketship. Now where will Terrence go? The rocket launched an unmanned craft, heading straight for planet Mars. As Terrence flew, he took some time to empty mayonnaise jars. Then he watched from out his window. The earth moved far away. "I'm free at last! Nobody's near! This is my lucky day!" At home on Mars to live his life. From jars he'll breathe the air. The land around is his alone. There is no need to share. Terrence walked outside, filled up with joy. He soon began to sing, "I've got this planet to myself. Of Mars I shall be king!" The celebration did not last that long. He was making so much noise. The sounds he made, they carried far, was heard by Martian boys. 2 Martian boys followed the noise to Terrence's new place. When Terrence saw the Martian boys, his eyes popped off his face. Poor Terrence shocked himself so bad, he fell down to the floor. Next thing he knew, a city grew, with aliens galore. As time went by, he learned to read and write the Martian text. But things could change. His home might fly. Who knows where he'll go next? So you listened to my story. I hope it made you grin. Check out my other stories. Perhaps you'll grin again. If you clicked that thumbs up button, I'd be mighty gratified. I'd be mighty gratifieder.